Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'm Gordon Burns, and it's good to be here again when at last we have, well, very real hope of getting back to near normal later this year. And for that, we have, of course, to thank the brilliant medical experts and researchers who came up so quickly with these superb vaccines that are giving us the route out of this dreadful pandemic. So hats off to them. And it does really underline the value of medical research and how lost we would be without the wonderful results it provides. And of course, that applies very much to our own Prevent Breast Cancer teams, who have done so much to understand the disease and produce great new treatments that have led to lower death rates and have extended lives. Much more, of course, still needs to be done, and you will realize exactly why when we remind you of the breast cancer statistics, and here they are briefly. 1 in 9 women in the UK will get the disease at some stage. 55,000 this year alone will be diagnosed with it, which means about 150 today, we're told. And 11,500, about a fifth of the overall total, will not survive breast cancer. And 1 in 10 breast cancers are diagnosed late. And of course, Prevent Breast Cancer Charity is working hard to bring those figures down as we continue to research and reach our goal of eventually eradicating breast cancer completely. And in the ongoing work to that end, these are the 4 areas our charity currently funds and continues to desperately need more donations if people can make any. Gene research, which are increasingly important these days as we find out how changes and mutations in genes can affect someone's risk of developing breast cancer. Early detection and screening, where we're identifying new and unique screening methods to ensure early and accurate doses, absolutely vital. Preventative drugs, looking to find new drugs that can significantly reduce risk, and diet and lifestyle factors, how these two, which everyone can do for themselves, can reduce an individual's risk. And it is that very last item that we're going to focus on strongly in tonight's update hour: diet and lifestyle. Being overweight, as I mentioned, can increase your chances of getting breast cancer. But the question is, why? Why does it increase your chances? Well, a breast cancer surgeon will tell us. And what can we do to reduce weight if we need to? Well, our resident dietitian and lifestyle expert will tell us. And how important is getting support to achieve the required loss. The founder of a Prevent Breast Cancer support group will tell us. So we're going to meet all 3. Just say hello to them at the beginning, all familiar to most of you who support the charity. There's James Harvey, our breast cancer surgeon and great supporter of the charity. And many of you remember his hair-raising charity race, bike race across America 2 years ago to raise a large amount of money for us. He'll be up first tonight. Then Michelle Harvey, who's not related, in fact, she spells her name differently anyway. Michelle Harvey is the charity's expert on diet and lifestyle, author of the hugely successful 2-day diet book, and she'll have lots of valuable tips and advice for you about eating, drinking, and exercise. And Laura Quigley, breast cancer survivor and the founder of the 2-day Diet Club, a support group where everyone helps each other hit their targets. She's going to tell us about the importance of support. And if that wasn't enough, we're also going to have a fun food and drink quiz. This is my thing, aren't they? It's all about calorie content, sugar content, and alcohol consumption. That's coming up in just a few minutes. So do get a piece of paper ready and a pen just to tick off your answers. It'll be multi-choice answers, dead simple, A, B, or C, tick. So that's coming up shortly. Right. I might add that James Harvey is going to come back at the end. This is important because a lot of you will want to know this. James Harvey is going to come back at the end of the program as well. He's up first, but he's going to come back at the very end to give us an update on what's happening in hospitals, about your appointments and about surgery in this lockdown period. Are there delays? Are some operations or appointments not happening, or are they near back to normal? He's going to give us an update on the very latest news on that, which I know many of you will want to know. That will come towards the end of the program. Okay, well, let's get into our first interview, which is with James Harvey, the breast cancer surgeon, who joins us now. James, I mentioned there in my earlier introduction to you the bike race across America from the west coast to the east, during which you were riding, as I remember, in a massive thunderstorm, and a bolt of lightning hit a roadside electricity substation and blasted you off your bike and out of the race. Pretty scary. And when I interviewed you about it at the Nightingale Centre after you got home, you said, quote, absolutely never again. So I just want to check before we start if that's still the case, or you might now be getting tempted post-COVID to have another go.
Hi, Gordon. I'm always tempted. Of course, I'm tempted. It was an amazing journey. But yeah, things have changed since then. Tom, who you remember did the bike ride with me, has had a little baby daughter called Daisy a few weeks ago. So he's now a new father. So I think that's probably our answer right there, that Tom's got much more important things on his plate than cycling.
But we should change your original quote of absolutely never again to maybe sometime.
Yeah, once Daisy's a bit older.
Yeah. Okay, down to business. Our theme tonight is the importance of an appropriate diet and lifestyle if you're overweight, because of the link between being overweight and getting breast cancer. So what are we talking about here? About how much does it increase your chances of getting breast cancer if you're overweight?
Yeah, I mean, it is linked to the amount of weight that you're carrying, Gordon, but if you're overweight, particularly as you get older, towards the menopause and after the menopause, it increases your risk by around about 70%. And that really kicks in, as I say, just before the menopause, but mainly for women who've been through the menopause.
So explain to us why that is the case. Why should carrying a few or even many extra pounds make you more susceptible to the disease? What goes on in the body?
So what we think happens is that the majority of breast cancers are estrogen driven. So they're estrogen sensitive cancers. So we think the amount of estrogen in your body is what drives cancer growth. So before the menopause, most of your estrogen is produced by your ovaries. But once you go through the menopause, really just about all your estrogen is produced peripherally, so elsewhere, not in your ovaries, so in your fat and in your liver, but mainly in your fat. So the more fat you carry, the more estrogen you produce, and estrogen drives tumor development. So essentially, the heavier you are, the more fat you have, the more estrogen you produce.
Well, you were talking there about postmenopausal women largely. So are you saying, therefore, the premenopausal women who might be overweight are not at an as increased risk as the older group?
I mean, that's probably a question for Michelle. She probably knows more about that than me. Certainly from the data, it looks like it's more important when you've gone through the menopause. I think there are, big health benefits of being healthy weight at any age, really, but the risk to breast cancer doesn't really kick in until later. So I think a younger woman, it's obviously good to get in the habit of healthy diet and lifestyle, which will prepare you. But I think Michelle, talking to Michelle earlier, she was telling me that on average, a woman puts on about 2 stone in weight between the ages of 20 and 50. So that's the sort of weight where generally relatively early in your life, you obviously want to try and concentrate on not putting that weight on if you can, so that by the time you get to your menopause, you're in a good place.
Yeah, well, as you say, I'll be talking to Michelle very shortly about what to do about it. But I want to talk to you also about your role as a breast cancer surgeon, because you will regularly, obviously, carry out mastectomies, as in breast removal operations, and indeed breast reconstruction. So if you are operating on an overweight woman, say, who obviously has got breast cancer and needs a lump or a breast, or even both breasts for that matter, removed, does her weight situation affect the actual operation itself?
It makes sense.
Sorry, could you repeat? I lost your sound. It makes
a massive difference, Gordon. All sorts of complications increase the heavier you are. So if we look at Gareth has collected a lot of data on women who have risk-reducing mastectomy, and if we follow our patients,
Sorry, we're just to interrupt there. We're talking Gareth Evans here, one of our great experts we often have on this program.
Yeah, sorry, Gordon. Gareth Evans. So he's shown some data that shows in the 30 years of the family history clinic, the average BMI of our patients has increased by a point just about every 10 years. So the women coming through the unit are generally getting heavier as a rule. And for surgery, just about every single complication is increased the heavier you are. It really increases greatly once your BMI gets to 30. And then once your BMI gets above 35, Gordon, the complication rate just takes off. And its risk of wound infections increases. The surgery is longer because it's more difficult. The surgery is often more extensive because you're taking out more tissue. There's high risk of blood clots, implant failure, failure of flap surgery, and just about every complication is increased if you're overweight.
Right. And basically you're saying there, the more overweight you are, the higher the chances of getting complications, correct?
Exactly, Gordon. Exactly. So that kind of colors the conversation, and it means that if you are heavily overweight, that might influence the number of surgical options you've got, or the type of surgery that you might be offered by your surgeon. And if you were
go on.
If you were the sort of surgery that we think about is for women, as they get heavier, their breasts obviously get larger. So we tend to do kind of reduction type surgery for a lot of these women to take the cancers out. But for the women who need a reconstruction, for the larger breasted women, you can't reconstruct those breasts with an implant because essentially you don't get implants big enough, or they just don't fulfill what's needed. So you'd want to use the patient's own tissue, but the heavier you are, the higher the risk of that surgery. And it's major surgery anyway. So, you don't want to be putting an overweight, heavy patient through a 6 to 8 hour operation because you're putting their life at risk.
Right. So whatever the patient's weight situation, do you still say, fine, you need this operation because you have breast cancer, I must go ahead and do it despite the high risk of complications? Or is there a point at which you would be forced to say to the patient, this is too dangerous to do because of your weight situation?
I think we'd like to have a conversation, Gordon, where we try and give the patient enough information that they understand what all the different options for surgery involve, and kind of lead them through the pros and cons of each operation, and really try with the patient to make a decision on what's in their best interests. It's rare that we'll turn around and say, this option is really not a sensible one for you. Usually by talking it through with the patient and explaining the pros and cons, most patients have a pretty good idea of their general health and the risks involved. And a lot of them will actually agree that maybe that option is not sensible for me in my current state of health. Maybe at the moment I'll go for something a little simpler. And if further down the line I've lost a substantial amount of weight, could I have that surgery in 2 or 3 years' time? So that's often an option that a patient will choose, to maybe have a simpler operation with the aim of maybe having the more major surgery they wanted further down the line.
And do you always give the patient the option to decide whether to go ahead and take the risk or not? Or do you ever say, I can't let you do that?
I think it would be rare, Gordon, for us to flatly say no. Generally, it's, as I say, it's just about giving the patient all the information they need to understand what the medical complications, the pros and cons are. And I think once you give them that information, it sort of, in a way, informs their decision. So it's rare that you have to kind of say, this is not on the table.
Just, obviously, I would have no experience of this area whatsoever, but when you say the complications, for instance, it increases infection the more overweight you are, or the chances of infection, why would that be?
Essentially, lots of reasons really. The surgery is longer on these patients, and the longer your surgery is, the higher your risk of infection. The wound healing is not as good in overweight patients. They're more prone to diabetes. The blood supply to larger breasts is often not as good as smaller breasts. So there's a kind of whole multitude of reasons in there, all mixed in. But just about every single surgical study in every specialty breast general surgery shows exactly the same thing: high risk of complications with obesity.
When you were talking there about implants or using the person's own tissue, if there isn't a particular weight problem, and they'll say, I don't know which to go for, which is preferable, which would you recommend?
No right answer here, Gordon. Most women will have a choice. So most women will have enough tissue to have the option of using their own tissue. But using your own tissue is a bigger operation. And it not only involves an operation on your breast, but it obviously involves an operation, let's say, on your tummy or your back to take the tissue from elsewhere. So essentially, you're having an operation on two sites. Whereas implant surgery, you are literally just having the operation on your breast, which is generally pretty easy to recover from. So some of it comes down to personal preference. If you've got busy life, busy family life, young kids, you may want the simplicity of an implant. But the downside of implants is they're kind of straightforward up front, easy to do, but they need maintenance surgery. So every 10, 15, 20 years, you'll need a little bit of service to them. Whereas if you use your own tissue, bigger investment up front, but probably little or nothing down the line because the tissue grows with you. So if you put weight on, your breast puts weight on. If you lose weight, your breast loses weight. So I would say autologous is definitely the kind of gold standard, but it's certainly not for everybody.
Okay. Well, I'll be talking to you again at the end of this update program about the situation now in the this forever lockdown period, although we can see an end to it at the minute, as to whether breast cancer appointments and treatments are all going ahead, or are there any delays and so on. So you'll be taking us up to date on that, and indeed whether reconstructions are taking place again, because they were, as I remember, suspended during the previous lockdown. So we'll be doing that later, but just in a word, some people may not be able to stay on or whatever. Are reconstructions taking place at the minute, like the ones you talked about, or are they not?
So simple reconstructions are happening, Gordon. So implant reconstructions are going ahead, but the more complex kind of 6 to 8 hour operations aren't going ahead, just because at the moment in Manchester, there's just not the theatre capacity to do that.
Right. So if it's implant surgery, yes, that's happening. If it's your own tissue, no, that's not.
Correct.
One last word then before we say goodbye for the moment, bring you back later. And it's a very basic, simple one. So what's your advice as a breast surgeon to women, although I think we've got the gist of it here, but what's your advice for women who may be carrying too much weight, even if it's only a little bit?
It's really about keeping control of your weight over many years and trying to get yourself to a comfortable weight, and trying to keep your BMI in a healthy range. I think the other thing that Michelle will probably talk about is that there are other risk factors for breast cancer which women can control. So thinking about reducing alcohol intake is important as part of diet and lifestyle, and reducing or minimizing HRT use are probably the things that most women can think about and influence.
Okay. We'll leave it then. Sorry, I'm getting my voice back in my ear now. That throws me a little bit. I hope this will go away when we say goodbye for now, James. That was fascinating stuff, and I'll see you again at the end of the program to update us on surgery and appointments and that sort of thing. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. That's better. I've lost the sound back in my ear. So there we are. Well, that was a pretty clear message and fascinating stuff from James Harvey about keeping weight under control. So we're going to concentrate now on how to do that, on diet and lifestyle, and how women can reduce their chances of getting breast cancer by eating a better diet, controlling their alcohol intake, which he mentioned strongly there, and of course exercising sufficiently. Well, our dietitian Michelle Harvey will be joining us in a moment, but first get some paper and pen that I suggested you got ready earlier at the ready, because it is quiz time. Coming up, our food and drink challenge. We have 10 questions coming up any second now, based on calorie intake, on sugar intake, and on alcohol intake. For each question, we'll give you three possible answers with pictures of the things we're talking about, three possible answers, A, B, or C. All you have to do is write down the one you think is correct. Is it A, is it B, or is it C? Simple. And it's all just for fun. We won't be asking you for your scores at the end. It's just for you to know. And you can lie to people anyway about what you got. There we go. So are you ready? We are going to start the quiz now. And here is question 1. What is the average daily energy requirement for a woman? Is it A, 1,000 calories, or B rather, 2,000 calories, or C, 3,000 calories? And I'll give you a few seconds to have a look at that and make your choice. Just write down A, B, or C, and how many calories, just to remind yourself. So you should have made your choice now, which means we're going straight on to question 2. Which of these takeaways has the highest number of calories? A 12-inch pepperoni pizza, B, a burger quarter pounder, or C, battered fish and chips? Which of those has the highest number of calories? Pizza, burger, fish and chips. Put down A, B, or C. Okay, let's hit question 3. Which of these foods has the most saturated fat? A, 2 grilled pork sausages, B, a Cornish pasty, or C, 100 grams of milk chocolate? Have a think and put your answer down. Question 4. What is the recommended maximum number of alcohol units that you can consume within a week? The recommended number of alcohol units. Is it A, 12, B, 14, C, 16? Ignore the picture, that's just a general example. You just need to think, is it 12 alcohol units, 14, or 16? You can consume within a week. Okay, hopefully your answer's down now. We'll go on to question number 5. Which of these drinks has the most alcohol units? A large glass of red wine, that's when you get in a pub, a large red wine in a pub, 250 mils. B, a pint of lager. C, a gin and normal tonic, that's a single gin, one pub measure, and not a slimline, but a normal tonic. A, B, or C? And next. What is the maximum recommended daily intake of sugar in one day for a woman? Is it A, 6 teaspoons, B, 8 teaspoons, C, 10 teaspoons? So which of those? 6, 8, or 10, the recommended daily intake of sugar for a woman per day. Question 7. Which of these non-alcoholic drinks contains the most sugar per 200 ml glass? A pure orange juice with bits, B, a cola, C, a mango smoothie? So A, B, or C? The most sugar in which one? Question 8. Which of these hot drinks has the most calories? Tea with semi-skim milk and no sugar, B, skinny latte, C, cafe mocha and syrup? Which of those 3? A, B, or C? Penultimate question, number 9. How many minutes of brisk walking does it take to burn the calories in an ice cream? How long to burn them off? A, 10 minutes, B, 30 minutes, C, 60 minutes. A, B, or C to burn off that ice cream? And finally, question 10. Which of these drinks has the most calories? The large glass of red wine, 250 mils, B, pint of lager, C, gin and normal tonic, as before, it's one pub measure gin and normal, not slimline, tonic. A, B, or C? Okay, that's it. I'm now going to go through the answers. What I want you to do is to give yourself 1 point for each one you got correct out of 10. And we'll see how you did at the end. But as I say, it's secret. It's only down to you. Or maybe you are playing against somebody at home. That will be fun. So are you ready? Here we go with the answers and all the details you need for each of the choices you had. So the daily energy requirement for a woman, 1,000 calories, 2,000 or 3,000, and there's your answer. B, you should have put down B at 2,000 calories. 1 point if you scored that. On to question 2. With you any second, there it is. Which of these takeaways has the highest number of calories? Was it the pizza, the burger, or the fish and chips? Well, underneath are the calories there. And well, fish and chips has quite a lot, 760, but it's the pepperoni pizza, 1,250 is the answer. A is your answer, pepperoni pizza. On to question 3. Which of these foods has the most saturated fat? Grilled pork sausages, Cornish pasty, or 100 grams of milk chocolate? Well, there's your answer again. Clearly, it is C at 23 grams, the milk chocolate. Okay, number 4. The recommended maximum number of alcohol units you consume in a week, 12, 14, or 16. Well, it was B, 14, the maximum in a week. And on we go with question 5. Which of these drinks has the most alcohol units? That was the large glass of red wine again, the pint of lager, the gin and normal tonic. And it was indeed the large glass of red wine at 3.5 units. Right, question 6. Hope you're doing well here. What is the maximum recommended daily intake of sugar in one day for a woman? 6, 8, or 10? Well, it's the least. Number 6, that's all you're allowed, 6 teaspoonfuls a day, or recommended, shall we say. A is your answer. Number 7. Which of these non-alcoholic drinks contains the most sugar per 200 ml glass? Well, there were your 3 choices, and it's by just over cola, the mango smoothie at 24 grams. So C, mango smoothie, correct answer. On to number 8. Which of these hot drinks has the most calories? Tea with semi-skimmed milk and no sugar, or skinny latte, or cafe mocha and syrup? Well, it's pretty obvious. I think it was always going to be the first one, would be the least, but it's the last one that is the most. So C is your answer. Hope you got that. And on to question 9, the penultimate question. How many minutes of brisk walking does it take to burn off the calories just in an ice cream? Well, it's 60 minutes, would you believe? C, 60 minutes of brisk walking to get rid of the ice cream calories. And finally, number 10. Which of these drinks has the most calories? The large red wine, the pint of lager, the gin and normal tonic, and well, there it is again, the large glass of red wine, which has 190 calories. So that was the most for calories. Well, there you go. Point for each of your answers. Wonder how well you did. Hopefully well. Top them all up. Give yourself a total. Should be able to do that quite quickly now. 1 point for each answer. Tot up a little total so you know what you got. And on the back of that quiz, therefore, it is the perfect time to bring in our diet and lifestyle expert, and of course the author of the hugely popular 2-day diet, Michelle Harvey. So let's welcome her. There she is. Hello.
Good evening. I got most of that right.
Well, I hope so. As you help me combine it, I would like.
My memory is a bit. Yeah, I got most of them right.
So, what do you think would be a respectable score for people at home?
Ooh,
out of 10?
I think some of those were quite tricky. So 7 or 8 would be pretty good. I think
7 or 8 would be pretty good.
Yeah.
What would you say to somebody who'd got 2 or 3?
Go and read the 2-day diet book because a lot of the information's in there.
Good suggestion. Good suggestion. One little thing there. We had well, the very last question, but also appeared an earlier one about a gin and ordinary tonic. Had that been a gin and slimline tonic, is there much difference, in fact, between a slimline tonic and an ordinary tonic?
Okay, so in terms of alcohol, no. So obviously you've still got a unit of alcohol. Yeah. And I think that had 105 calories. So if you had a slimline gin and tonic, it would probably be about 50 calories. So you're saving about 65 calories. So, yeah, it's
okay. Well, let's get down to business about diet and lifestyle then, because just before the quiz, we heard from James Harvey on why and how being overweight can increase your chances of getting breast cancer, not to mention other cancers and other diseases, I should add. And as the Prevent Breast Cancer dietitian working with women who have had breast cancer and might be overweight, or who haven't had breast cancer and want to reduce their chances of getting it by losing some weight, you will, I'm sure, be keen to back up James there about the dangers of putting on too much weight.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as James said, it's one of the real problems that we often see, and one of the big risk factors is actually gaining weight as you go through your adult life, which is what people often do. So, the average, as James said, the average woman in the UK will gain about 2 stone, probably between over those sort of premenopausal years, if you like, between the age of 20 and 50. And that increases your risk of developing breast cancer, mainly after the menopause. But of course, you only have that risk of breast cancer there because you've been heavier in your premenopausal years. So women of any age should sort of be thinking about trying to control their weight, not putting it on. And then if they have gain weight, then trying to reduce it. And we did some work, we've talked about this before a couple of times. We did a piece of research we published in 2006 showing that if a woman's gained weight, as they often do, and they can lose 5 or 10% of that weight, then they can reduce their risk by about 25%. So, it is preventing weight gain is the optimal thing to do. But if you've already gained weight, it's not all over. You can really improve your health by losing it and reducing your risk.
Okay, before I get into the whys and wherefores of that, how do you know if you are overweight? I mean, some people know immediately, others will think, am I or am I not? How do you know you're overweight, or indeed what your ideal weight should be? How do you find out?
It's tricky, and especially when you think that the average person in the UK actually has a weight that is probably about 3/4 of a stone above an ideal, or at the top end of the healthy weight range, I should say. So one thing that we look at is something called your body mass index, which is a ratio of your weight over your height squared. Now, you're not going to be able to work that out in your head. There are body mass index calculators that you can look at. The NHS has one. And basically, if you have a body mass index that's between 18.5 and 25, that's in the healthy range. And over that, you're getting into overweight and then obese categories if it's above 30. So that's one thing. But, going back to the thing about weight gain, trying to think, what did I weigh when I was in my early 20s? And, how far away from that am I? For most people, that's a reasonable parameter. And then the other one that's really simple is actually where you store your fat that's often brings about health risks. So having weight around our middle is bad. So there's something called a waist to height ratio. If your waist is more than half of your height, that's bad news. So you should aim to have a waist measurement that's less than half of your height, and that's a fairly simple thing to measure. We generally measure waist sort of around the belly button, not when you're breathing in. So those are the 3 things to think about, really.
Well, I'm interested to know about why people put on weight when they know the consequences of it. I mean, you're talking there about women from 20 onwards find themselves putting on weight, which may build up to a couple of stone above their recommended weight, maybe more, maybe less. But one presumes that weight increase is down to a variety of things. Is it to do with laziness? Is it to do with greed? Is it to do with comfort? Is it ignorance of the calories they're intaking? What are the drivers behind people putting on weight?
I mean, this is why it happens so commonly. There's so many factors that collude. So to gain weight, there's a very simple equation, but sometimes a difficult one to crack, is that if we're gaining weight, we're taking in more calories from food and drink, and we mustn't forget drink, than we're actually expending. And we burn calories either by we burn calories by existing. So even if we didn't move, we'd be burning sort of, around about, depending on how big you are, you'd burn between 1,200 and 2,500 calories a day just by existing and all your organs functioning. And on top of that, of course, we burn calories by being physically active. So, and there are so many things that influence what we eat and drink and how active we are. So portion sizes is something that people don't often know about. So portion sizes have really crept up. I remember in the 70s, a bag of crisps was 25 grams now, and that had 130 calories in, which I'm sure I noticed when I was a child.
And a little bit of salt in a blue.
Absolutely, yes. And we had them when we came out of swimming. That was the only time we had crisps in the week. And then now, you stop at a service station and you buy a grab bag of crisps, or you can do, and they're 50 grams. So guess what? They've got twice the calories. A slice of bread now is 45, 50 calories, whereas it used to be 25. So, portion sizes have doubled. And generally you eat a bag of crisps, don't you? You don't eat half bags. So that's one issue. People aren't aware of the calories in food. And I think the quiz we've just done highlights that, and the hidden fats and sugars in things. So that the takeaway we didn't have on there, actually, Gordon, was like a korma that you might buy, a chicken korma curry, which can have about 1,200 calories in with all the fat in it. Yeah, exactly. And it's probably all the saturated fat as well. So I think there's a lack of awareness and also knowledge about foods. Our whole home economics, education is pretty poor, and also people don't know how to cook simple meals and things like that. And then there's lots of reasons why we eat. So we eat when we're hungry, but if we only did that, then we wouldn't have a problem. But we often eat when we're bored, when it's a habit, when we're sad. And one of the things that we often see in the clinic, Gordon, is, of course, sadly, we're dealing with women who are at high risk of breast cancer, often because they're from families who have had quite a big burden of breast cancer. And some of the women we see have issues with, comfort eating and sort of anxiety and depression. And often they sort of try and address those with food. So, which of course may help in the short term, but isn't a long-term solution. And there's also, sometimes people just eat when they're happy, so we know that people that get married, cohabit, or when they get married, women often gain weight because they tend to eat the same as a man and they don't need the same portions as a man. So there's a lot of factors.
Okay, let's then talk about doing something about it, how to lose the weight you need to lose. And you have tried to make that easier for people with a 2-day diet plan. So take us through fairly briefly as time goes on, but take us through the principles of that.
The 2-day diet? So basically...
That could mean, when I look at it, I could say, that's brilliant. So I could lose my weight in 2 days, the 2-day diet plan. Or it could mean every 2 days I can have what I like. So tell us about it and what it does.
I think the good news is the 2-day diet plan, we started researching that actually at the Nightingale Centre and with Prevent, actually back in 2006. So that's 15 years ago. And the 2-day diet book came out in 2013. So the 2-day diet has actually endured for 8 years, and it's still popular and people are still very interested in doing it. So what is it? For 2 days a week, we're trying to cut down people's calorie intake by about a quarter. That's what we're doing. Whatever diet you're asked to do, whether it's you go to Weight Watchers, Slimming World, generally that's what people are asking you to do. Every day, cut your calories down by about a quarter. So we decided to take that 7 days of cutting your diet down by a quarter and actually putting it into 2 strict days of dieting. So for 2 days a week, you cut your calories down by about 3/4, and it's 2 days of a low carb diet with enough protein foods, enough fruit and vegetables, and a little bit of fat. So you've got the nutrients you need. It helps fill you up so you don't feel hungry or deprived, hopefully. And then the other days of the week, the other 5 days, is a Mediterranean diet. And with that diet, we can get about 6 out of 7 people successfully losing weight. Whereas a daily diet can be anything like sort of 4 or 5 at best with the right support. So it works.
I was just going to say, so if you haven't already got it, how do you get the 2-day diet?
So the 2-day diet, so the books we wrote in 2013 are still available, and all the I wrote them with my great friend and colleague, Professor Tony Howell, and all the author proceeds go to prevent breast cancer. So it's a win-win. So it's an evidence-based book that we've tested in the clinic, probably now in well over probably over 1,500 women, actually, and men. Now we've been using it in patients with diabetes, and so the diet works, and the proceeds go to the charity. So it's a win-win.
Okay. Now, in so often in all these diet programs we see on the telly or we read in magazines, etc., drink is never mentioned. Yet so many people drink wine every night. They go on about it on social media. You've seen the stuff. Hey, it's nearly wine o'clock. Going to open a bottle. Can't wait to open a bottle tonight. I've had such a hard day. All that sort of thing. Yet there is a real calorie count, as you mentioned earlier. And so did James. A real calorie count to be considered here, isn't there?
So alcohol is a source of calories. And also, if we're thinking about breast cancer, it's independent of its calories and effect on weight. It increases our risk of breast cancer, partly because it actually, people might not realize, it increases your estrogen levels. And we know that 8 out of 10 breast cancers are estrogen driven. So it increases your estrogen levels. It also, there are some sort of toxic metabolites of alcohol that possibly damage our cells and initiate cancer. And it also lowers folate levels in the body. So alcohol is not good news. And of course, the other thing about the calorie effect of alcohol is when you've had a drink, you tend to feel hungry and a bit disinhibited. And then certainly the next day, if you've really overdrunk, then you certainly have the munchies. So it's not good news. And certainly in our diets, we don't tell people not to have alcohol, but we ask people to certainly to keep within the 14 units, or maybe even drop down to about 10 units. And not drinking every day.
Yeah, that's interesting. The 14 units, right. Very briefly then, that is not a lot, 14 units. Roughly how many glasses of wine or pints of lager is that in a week that makes up 14 units? Okay,
so you had our star of the quiz was our 250 glass of red wine, and you can have 3 of those would give you your 14 units, or you can have 5 pints of lager.
This is a week, not per night. I should hasten it.
It's 4 of the red, the 250. Yes, a week. 4 of those 250 glasses. Yes, that's right. And 5 pints of lager.
Well, that's a lot. I'm sure people will take note of that. We're coming up towards the end of our time here. I know you're recruiting for a special study. So very briefly, if you could tell us about that.
Yeah. So we're pretty sure that weight loss reduces women's risk, and we are currently recruiting to a study which is looking at whether a strict diet, which is with an 800 calorie diet for 12 weeks, which if people follow it, they lose about 15% of their weight. We're interested to see what effects that has on the healthy breast tissue and a healthy healthy womb tissue, and seeing whether we can see changes which suggest that cancer risk is going down. So if women are interested, we're currently recruiting. So it does require people to be in the sort of body mass index category of body mass index of over 30 and still having regular periods and premenopausal. And they would have to agree to have these biopsies of the breast and womb at the start of the study, and then after 3 months. But then after that, they go into a supported weight loss program for 12 months. And so it's, if you want to lose weight and you think you might be eligible, I would suggest you contact the email number, the email address on that slide there, mft.probe.tdr@nhs.net. The phone line is not manned that often, obviously, because we're working remotely because of COVID. So if you drop an email to that, and then we can send you the eligibility criteria and more information.
Okay, our time is up. Michelle, that was great stuff, and thank you very much for that. I'm sure a lot of people are taking note, and you'll see a surge now in your book sales after that, I'm sure. Anyway, thanks very much indeed, and we'll chat again on another occasion, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Michelle Harvey, thank you. Just to remind you that very shortly, James Harvey, our breast cancer surgeon drawn at the beginning, is going to come back at the end for the vital questions to know. Many of you want to know. It's all about appointments in hospital. Are they going ahead? Are they taking place? Are they taking place quickly if you need them? Are the operations going ahead and reconstructions and so on? He'll be here to give you the latest up-to-date information on that. And if we can fit them in, I've got a couple of questions in that have come in from you guys at home as well. I'll try and put to him. But right now, we heard there about what people need to do to lose weight and so on. And one of them, of course, is to have support from friends, etc., to help each other and encourage her. And we're going to underline that now by talking to someone who suffered from breast cancer. Then, having put on extra weight during her treatment, embarked on the 2-day diet plan, which in turn, and this is why she's here, led her to launch the Prevent Breast Cancer 2-Day Diet Club, where like-minded people wanting to shed the pounds could join up to help and encourage others to reach their target weights. And it has proved to be a huge success. And I'm sure you may well be interested and want to join. So here to tell us more about the club and how you can join it, and her own personal and difficult story too, is Laura Quigley. Hello, Laura.
Hi, good evening, Gordon.
Hello, great stuff. So before we get to the 2-day diet club, let's just talk very briefly about what happened that led you to founding the club, because I know it's still quite raw with you, and I appreciate that. And we'll just deal with it as gently and quickly as we can, but it's important to know. And we will try and keep it very short. Basically, you found a breast lump while attending Prevent Breast Cancer's family history clinic, because you did have a family history of the disease, didn't you?
I did, Gordon. So unfortunately, the cancer got me before I could get it. We have a family history of breast cancer. My family, we have the BRCA1 mutation, and some close family members have that. So I decided to have the BRCA1 gene test at the Nightingale Centre after I'd finished having my children. I'd made the decision that if I had the gene mutation, then I would have my preventative surgery. But unfortunately, whilst waiting for my gene test result, by coincidence, I found a lump, which turned out to be triple-negative breast cancer.
Right. And am I right in saying your sister decided to be checked out as well, didn't she?
She did, and she doesn't mind me saying, she's watching tonight. So Gemma actually had the gene test before I did, and she knew she was a carrier, and she'd already had her ovaries removed. And we were kind of making the decision about whether she'd go forward with the mastectomy. And before she made that decision, then I got my diagnosis, and that meant that her risk of getting breast cancer shot up significantly. I think the figure that Gemma was given was about 97% chance of getting breast cancer. So she actually had her preventative surgery more or less the same week that I started chemotherapy. So
we're talking a double mastectomy, yes?
She had a double mastectomy and reconstruction the same week as I started chemotherapy. So our poor parents were put through the mill that week, certainly.
And of course, deeply concerning, because you and your sister are both mothers of girls. I mean, you've got 2 young girls and your sister has got 3, isn't that right?
We do. We've got 5 girls between us, so the work from Prevent Breast Cancer is hugely important to our family.
So when you were diagnosed with breast cancer, then just take us through briefly what happened, the treatment, etc. What happened to you?
So I had 6 months of chemotherapy, and then I had surgery at the end I'd had already decided to have the preventative surgery. So I had a double mastectomy and reconstruction, and I also had my ovaries removed as well.
Just hang on now, Laura. We may have lost your sound there. I didn't hit your last 5 or 6 words. Can you repeat them?
So I had my chemotherapy. I did 6 months of chemotherapy, and then I had my surgery. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we got you now. Yeah. Go on.
Yes, I had the preventative surgery sort of at the same time. So rather than just having a lumpectomy or a single mastectomy, I had my double mastectomy at the end of my cancer treatment. And also because the BRCA1 gene carries the risk of ovarian cancer, I decided to have my ovaries removed at that time as well.
Right, so a really tough time, and but you look fit and well now, so hopefully you've come through it all pretty well, yes?
I have, yes, I'm fine now, thank you.
Well, let's get on to this period that after you'd gone through your treatment, your chemo and so on, you found yourself having put on a bit of weight. We're now weighing a bit more than you should do or wanted to do, and you knew the dangers of that. Isn't that right?
That's right. I think the steroid-laden chemotherapy didn't help things. Maybe water retention, a lot of comfort eating to try and get through that difficult time. I'd also had 2 pregnancies quite close together before I was diagnosed, so I think I was carrying additional weight from that. Prior to the pregnancies and the cancer, I'd always been a very healthy weight, so it troubled me when I'd finished my treatment, and I was quite anxious to get rid of that weight.
Were you aware you were eating too much or not exercising enough?
I think with the cancer treatment, you just kind of get through how you need to get through. I remember someone telling me to carry on running throughout it, and it's not possible. Not with 2 young children anyway. you just have to get through how you can manage. So yeah, I probably was aware that I was overeating to get through it. Chemotherapy is quite strange. For me, it had the effect of feeling quite hungover, like having the white wine without the party. And I kind of wanted to eat stodgy carbohydrates, crisps, things like that to get rid of the nausea.
So what did you do? How did you set about losing weight?
So I knew of Prevent Breast Cancer, the charity, and I then learned that they had developed this diet called the 2-day diet. So I read up about it, and I also had the huge privilege of being able to see Michelle just after I'd finished chemotherapy. And she talked me through the 2-day diet. And once I'd read the science behind the diet, it was just a game changer for me. It's incredible. I think once you read the books and you understand what you need to do and what actually the fat loss does to your body, I was just good to go. I had everybody roped in, even my poor husband, who still does the 2-day diet to this day.
So he did it with you, the diet, the 2-day diet, yes?
He still does it now. Yep, he's done his 2 days this week. So yeah, sometimes begrudgingly. I think it's sometimes harder for men because they do sometimes need to eat more. But I think he rarely cooks, so he eats whatever's being made in the kitchen. And if that's no carbs, then that's what he has.
Fair enough. Not sure whether I could do it, but I'd try maybe. During this time, when you're doing that and losing your weight and so on, you hit on the idea of setting up the 2-day diet club. What was your reasoning for doing that?
Well, I found as I started the diet, I was kind of eating separate foods and doing it separately to how I would cook for the family. So I had this idea of how can I incorporate it into family cooking? How can I make things actually a little bit easier? Was there any products in the shops that I could buy, to make me do the restricted days, especially? And so I just had loads of ideas going around my head, and I was swapping them with some friends who I'd roped in to do the diet. I also wanted to try and raise funds for the charity, but I was limited in the time I had with two small children. So with some help from some friends at Prevent Breast Cancer, they suggested that I did like a virtual support group, and the 2-Day Diet Club was formed as a Facebook group in July 2019.
And how many members have you got now?
I think it says on the slide there, actually, that's just come up. So as of today, we've got 261 members.
Okay, so that's pretty good. And how do you communicate with each other? What happens? How do you exchange your thoughts and views?
So it's set up as a Facebook group. So if people search for the 2-Day Diet Club on Facebook and opt to join that, it comes up as a page, and you can post on the page. So I do several posts a week, just sharing ideas and tips. People can post on the page as well, updating us of their progress, anything that they found difficult, anything that they want help on. We've also had the invaluable support of the dietitians, including Michelle. So if there's any questions that we don't know in the group, then they are happy to answer them for us as well.
Okay, and what about you? How long did it take you following the 2-day diet plan to get back to your target weight?
So it was probably about a year after I started the diet. I lost sort of the 2 or 3 stone that I'd put on over my pregnancies and treatment. But more importantly to me, as I read the science behind the diet, it was my drop in BMI. And again, it was about a year before I got from the overweight category down to the optimum range.
Right. Well, our time's just about up. I mean, you mentioned there, we put the graphic up and so on about the Diet Club, but just for somebody who might got pen or pencil ready or want to do it, tell us again how you get in touch with the Diet Club and sign up, and maybe we could show the graphic again. There we go. So how do you do it?
Okay, so if you go onto Facebook and you go to the search section, if you search in there for the 2-Day Diet Club, you should find us. And if you press to join the group, then we'll very happily accept people. Life is busy for everybody at the moment. So we're hoping people will join, add some more posts, support our current members who are currently dieting, bring ideas. We'd really appreciate that. Yeah, please feel free to join.
Having that support means so much and helps people so much to reach their target weights. Very important, and I hope anyone who's watching who isn't a member and is losing weight might well join up to that club. So, well, yours is quite a story, Laura, and it's been fascinating listening to it. Thank you very much indeed for joining us and telling us that. I know the early bit was difficult for you, but it's well worth hearing. And good luck with the club.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good. Well done, Laura. Now, we're fast approaching the end of the update program, but one highly important area before we go, telling you about it throughout the program. So many of you want to know, and it's this. In the first lockdown period, many cancer appointments and treatments had to be put on hold. Breast cancer reconstruction surgery was suspended. So the situation now, what is it after a long second lockdown period, which is still going on for a bit longer? To find out, we're going to bring back James, our breast cancer surgeon, James Harvey, to ask him those questions. James, if you are someone sitting at home now, having discovered maybe a breast lump or something you don't think is normal and you're worried about, and you also think, well, I'll never get an appointment, I'll never get seen and all the rest of it because of COVID. I'm not even that comfortable. I'm going to have it looked at because of COVID. What is the current situation? Is everything going ahead normally? Is it delayed, or is some of it not happening?
When it comes to seeing us, you can pretty much see us within about 2 weeks of seeing your GP now, Gordon. So it was at its worst probably about 3 or 4 weeks to get your appointment. But we're doing evenings and weekends to try and catch up and get through the backlog. So at the moment, we're running just over about 2 weeks on average to see a woman, and she'll have the assessment on the same day, mammograms, ultrasound, all on the same day. So new appointments are are really not delayed at all compared to how we were before the pandemic. I guess there are some differences in that breast screening is behind where it should be. And that's probably going to carry on for a period of time. So your breast screening appointment will happen, but it might be a little bit delayed. Those that are run through the family history clinic should be running now pretty much as normal. So women like Laura who are at higher risk should be getting their mammograms and MRIs as per normal.
And are you still working at the Nightingale Centre? Does a lot of this happen? Is it still there?
Absolutely, still going strong, Gordon. Still going strong. Yeah, we're still doing surgery. The number of theatre lists we have is slightly reduced, but our cancer surgery is still going ahead in good time. As we said, we're able to offer immediate reconstruction, so that's still going ahead. But as I say, slightly limited in the choice, but it's still going ahead. I think the thing we're not allowed to do at the moment is we're not allowed to do kind of revisional surgery to reconstructions, cosmetic type surgery we're not allowed to do. And unfortunately, women who've had mastectomies in the past and are waiting for what we call a delayed reconstruction, that's not happening at the minute. And I suspect in the next 6 months, all those kind of activities will restart again.
Because I missed it there. If you're doing a mastectomy, most people's choice would be to have reconstruction done immediately after it. Is that happening or not?
It's happening, Gordon. Yeah. There aren't as many options as normal. We can only do implant type reconstructions. So we can't do the kind of fancy tummy tuck reconstructions in Manchester, but you get the option of having a reconstruction, at least keeping the skin and keeping the look of the breast.
So I think we said earlier, but for those who might have missed it earlier, implant surgery only and reconstruction, yeah?
Correct. Yeah.
So when do you plan to get back to normal? How long do you think it'll take where everything's happening when you want it to happen?
Oh, Gordon, I don't know. I think gradually over the next 6 months, we will get more theatre capacity. The thing about the hospital is that obviously it's not just breast cancer work that's going on, it's all sorts of cancer work and heart operations and so on. So there's a national system where we set priorities for patients. So kind of priority one would be, life-saving surgery, like you've been run over by a bus. And 5 would be completely non-essential kind of cosmetic surgery. So most breast cancer surgery is fairly high priority, so a 2 or a 3. So those will continue to get done. And as the hospital kind of opens up, we'll be allowed to do more of the kind of lower priority surgery. But I think to clear the backlog, Gordon, at the moment, I'm saying to patients who want a delayed reconstruction, I'm saying realistically, I think 2 to 3 years realistically to get through all the backlogs. So for the reconstruction, I think it'll start with us offering autologous reconstructions for women who are diagnosed with a breast cancer. And then as time goes by, then offering it to those risk reducing. And then as time goes by, then offering it to those who are waiting for delayed reconstruction.
Okay, well, thanks for the update there. I'm sure a lot of people will have been interested to hear that and where we're at. I mean, very basically, the bottom line is relatively good news all round about appointments and about surgery. So that's good news. Now, before we go, because we are up now against our time, we're about to say goodbye, but we have had a few questions coming in, which if you're game for it, I will throw your way.
I'm game.
Okay. Here's one that we got. Someone who says, I know a lot of, ladies, as she puts it, on television now. I have to say women, I'm not allowed to say ladies, the way things are going. I know a lot of women who are getting breast cancer again, whether it is another cancer or the first one recurring after a very long time, 20 or 30 years. Is there any research or anything being done to suggest why this should be?
It's in the nature of breast cancer, unfortunately, Gordon. So many cancers, for instance, let's say colorectal cancer, if you go 5 years and the cancer doesn't come back, it'll never come back. Unfortunately, breast cancer is not like that. So Laura, who we heard from who I thought was really inspirational, I thought it was amazing what she's done. she had a triple negative breast cancer, so it was hormone insensitive. So triple negative breast cancers tend to be more aggressive, more chemotherapy sensitive, and if they're going to come back, they tend to come back quickly within maybe 5 to 7 years. So for Laura, if she gets through those first kind of 7 years, she's pretty much going to be cancer free. But in contrast, estrogen sensitive tumors, which, as Michelle said, is about 80% of the cancers we see, they do tend to come back more in the first 2 or 3 years, but then there's a kind of long tail of when they come back, Gordon. So they're as likely to come back in years 5 to 10 as they are years 10 to 15, as they are years 15 to 20. So with an estrogen receptor cancer, they can come back at any time, you know, up to 30 years later.
Is there any link at all for the older women who are getting cancer coming back with the pill that first came into being in the 1960s and through the 70s and so on, where it probably isn't as sophisticated a thing as it is now? And there were warnings then about the possibilities of increased risk of cancer. Is there any possibility that the people who are taking it then, who are now the older generation, are suffering as a result?
It doesn't seem to be so, Gordon. With hormones of any kind, we tend to see the same thing. So while you're on the hormones, let's say you're on the contraceptive pill, or if you're on HRT, it does slightly increase your risk of breast cancer while you're on it, and it probably increases your risk for a couple of years after it. But once you're 5 years after taking those hormones, your risk comes back to as if you hadn't had it. So just your other baseline risk factors, but the hormones don't count anymore.
Right, I'll just put one more question to you then. What are your thoughts or knowledge of, and I'm sure it's very much your territory, your thoughts or knowledge of breast cancer implant illness? Okay.
This is an interesting one. So if you look at all the women who have breast implants in, there is an association with increased conditions such as fatigue and autoimmune disease, Gordon. There's no kind of direct link as to why the implants cause these problems, but certainly more women who have breast implants seem to have these illnesses. And certainly we've all, I think, experienced a number of women who've had non-specific symptoms, fatigue, hair loss, who often improve once the implants are out. And how much of that is, you know, anxiety related to the implant and anxiety in general that's relieved, and how much is related to the actual immunology of the implant, we're not clear.
Okay, well, that was excellent, and thank you very much indeed for that and for answering those questions. Been great having you on the program. Look forward to the next chat as well, and have a good evening. It's time for your dinner now.
It is.
I know your wife is cooking you a secret meal, so I hope it's a good one.
Oh, so do I. So do I. Secret to me too.
But don't be putting on too much weight. That's it. So thank you, James. Brilliant. And that brings us to the end of another update hour. I hope you found it all both informative and hopefully valuable. My thanks to our guests tonight, to James Harvey, to Michelle Harvey, and to Laura Quigley. And of course, huge thank you to you for watching. You will have seen scrolling across the bottom of the screen every so often, as it is now, how to contribute to the Prevent Breast Cancer charity if you wish to. And of course, with so many of our big charity funding events not being able to take place because of this lockdown, every penny that comes in means an awful lot to prevent breast cancer. So anything you can do, we'd be grateful. Finally, just before I go, I'd like to throw a huge piece of appreciation to two people sitting beside me at the minute who are members of the Prevent Breast Cancer team who have been mastering this tricky technology and pressing the buttons to get the show on the air and getting us through to the end. Talking about Ashwini Foster and Nikki Barakla. Both done a lot of background work and so on to get here, and we thank them very much for that. And a big thank you to Pixel Inspiration, whose building they let us have free of charge to do this program, which is absolutely fantastic. So there we are. That's it. We'll see you next time when hopefully big progress will have been made in emerging from this final, we're promised, final lockdown, and we'll be steaming ahead towards at least as near a normal life as possible. Bring it on. From all of us here, a very good night to all of you. Good night.